Your Los Angeles Dodgers are as committed to winning as any organization in professional sports. And just as we've seen during this offseason, the Los Angeles Dodgers go out and make some really big, impactful moves. We saw the addition or the re-signing of a Teoscar Hernandez combined with the signing of a Michael Conforto. They signed one of, if not the best starting pitcher on the free agent market in a Blake Snell. They got the best bargain of the free agent market and arguably of the last couple of seasons in a Roki Sasaki. Just as we were on the cusp of that, or just as the dust had kind of settled on Roki Sasaki and his signing to the Dodgers strike again. And they showed that they are not just content with one World Series championship or two World Series championships within the past 5 years. They are going for it all, and they are doing whatever it takes to win another World Series championship. And with that, the Los Angeles Dodgers make another impact move for the best free agent reliever on the market. Tanner Scott is a Los Angeles Dodger. I could not be more excited about it. He is absolutely incredible. The best free agent reliever on the market, is a dominant left-handed force that profiles really well with this Dodgers pitching staff and is going to add another one of these weapons that is going to help this team be as good as they possibly can be. Yes, nothing is given in the game of baseball, and we've seen great Dodgers teams come and go and not be able to finish the job. This team has all the tools at their disposal to go out there and win back-to-back World Series championships and start a dynasty for the Los Angeles Dodgers. It is exciting, and I'm excited to be able to join you guys talking about it here Monday afternoon. It's a little bit earlier than when I normally go on. In fact, a little bit of a programming note. Before we get started, I'll get to that programming note in just a second. I should introduce myself. My name is Austin Brubaker. I am one of the hosts here, Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. So incredibly thankful and excited to be joined by you guys here live on a Monday afternoon. Programming note for these Monday night shows that I typically do. What's going to happen to these shows on Mondays is I'm going to be going live for a lot of these shows right after I'm done working. With today being MLK Day, happy MLK Day to everybody. I actually did have the day off, so it's actually been pretty nice not having to work, getting able to relax. Going a little bit earlier, but only slightly earlier than when I'm going to be scheduled to go on Monday nights until the loon season begins, and then we'll reassess how busy the schedule is. The typical start time in Pacific time is going to be 2:15 Pacific is when I'm traditionally going to go on. That's right after the 5 o'clock hour here on the East Coast, which I'm from the state of Michigan, which, by the way, it's really cold here. It's wind chills well into the negatives at this point. It's freezing over here. Still thinking of everybody out there in Los Angeles, though. So, scheduling note for the Monday shows that I'll be having will typically be at 2:15. Excited to be on a little bit earlier today. Have some stuff going on to the house. Gotta fix some spark plug issues with my car. Going back to what we were talking about, though, and we'll get to the comment section in just a little bit as people are tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in and for the support that you guys have had for Dodgers Daily. It's been breathtaking to see what you guys have done and the support that you have because of your support for the Los Angeles Dodgers. So we want to justify that and provide a program that's worthy of that conversation. Let's start off with the free agent signing that the Dodgers added in. The Dodgers signed Tanner Scott, free agent left-handed reliever. Now, I'm gonna preface this because I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page of who Tanner Scott is, so that you understand the profile, the type of player, and when he could be utilized if you are not familiar with Tanner Scott coming into this system. So, he is a left-handed reliever, and really over the course of the past couple of seasons is where he has broken out and become so dominant of a left-handed arm. Early in his career, which he grew up a lot of his time within the Baltimore system, struggled quite a bit with his command. You talk about his walks per nines typically being in the upper fours, or even for a lot of seasons as recently of 2022 at 6 or 6.5 per nine. This was a left-handed reliever that was trying to find his command, trying to find his control, and his swing and miss stuff was phenomenal during that time in the 30% category. What happened over the past 2 seasons is he was able to find his control and able to throw more strikes. You combine that with his really solid swing and miss stuff, and you're going to have a really solid pitcher, especially with a Tanner Scott who gets a well above average amount of ground balls. So when you're talking about pitchers, and when you're talking about pitchers in general, there's a couple of things that the pitcher can control that's going to lead to a lot of good results. The first thing that you want to look at is strikeouts and walks. Obviously, getting a lot of strikeouts is good. Getting a lot of walks is not so good. That's putting extra base runners on there. And so what you want to look to see, is this a guy that's going to get a decent amount of swing and miss, and how much swing and miss is he going to have? So let's look at Tanner Scott, and let's look at this past season, the 2024 season, to see some of the indications as far as swing and miss percentage. Last year, Tanner Scott, and this is all from StatCast, was in the 86th percentile in strikeout percentage at 28.6%. He was in the 98th percentile in that category in 2023. What about his whiff percentage, amount of swings and the swings that end up in misses? That was at 32.7%. That's in the 92nd percentile in baseball, 97th in 2023. What about his chase percentage, amount that he's able to get hitters to chase outside the zone? That was in the 84th percentile. Again, in 2023, that was in the 99th percentile. All of these indications leads to a lot of really good swing and miss stuff that Tanner Scott gets, which, if you have a knowledge about how this organization runs, how this organization operates, the guys that they look for are those guys that have really good, really solid swing and miss stuff. His stuff is absolutely incredible. If you look at a statistic called Stuff Plus, which, if you're not familiar with Stuff Plus, it is a newer analytic introduced into the game of baseball. Given all of the data that we have as far as pitch metrics in the game of baseball, we're able to actually analyze and see how much a pitch moves, what the spin rate is, what is the actual all of these different indicators of how the pitch is shaped, so that you can maximize the effectiveness of there. And what Stuff Plus attempts to do is it attempts to put on a scale of 100, like WRC Plus, the actual effectiveness of some of this stuff. And Tanner Scott is able to have some insane stuff. Really just a 2-pitch pitcher for him. He has a fastball and he's got a slider. Fastball last year he threw it almost 60% of the time. Slider was about 40% of the time. It has been reversed where he's thrown the slider a little bit more than the fastball. Fastball is going to typically sit around 97-ish miles per hour, 97, 98, something like that. But what's really cool about Tanner Scott is his stuff is absolutely electric. Last year, he had an overall Stuff Plus, given the 2 pitches that he had, of 145, which was one of the best. He had some of the best pure stuff, metrically wise, in the game of baseball, according to the calculations of Fangraphs and Stuff Plus. Last year, his fastball had a Stuff Plus of 151, slider of 136. The year beforehand, in 2023, Stuff Plus was combined 124. Year before, 141. Just absolutely ridiculous for Tanner Scott with how effective his stuff is, which is going to lead to a lot of swing and miss. Past couple of seasons, we mentioned the percentile towards the 90th percentile in strikeout percentage. It was like that for Tanner Scott. One of the limitations, and this was especially early in his 2024 campaign, he actually really struggled with his command. In April, I believe he had like a 21% walk percentage. He was really struggling out of the gate throwing a lot of strikes. He was walking a whole lot of people. He was able to limit the damage. I believe during that time period, he still had an ERA under 3 because he still has the effectiveness of the swing and miss stuff. And that's you're able to mask some of the issues that you have with command if you're able to have a lot of swing and miss stuff, which last year he did not have a 21% walk percentage. It dropped down through the course of the season of 12%. The year before that was about 8%. He gets a lot of swing and misses, and he's also able to generate a healthy amount of ground balls too. Last year being in the 88th percentile of getting ground balls, which that's going to not be as damage of hits. Typically look at line drives and fly balls as being the hits that are going to be hit for damage quite a bit. Tanner Scott is one of the best relievers in the game of baseball because he's one of those pitchers that gets some of the most swing and miss stuff. He combines that with his ability to get a decent, healthy amount of ground balls. And you look at all the underlying metrics, all the expected data, it is still really solid. There is actual results, what actually happens, and then there's the underlying metrics, the expected stuff based on the batted ball profile. And the expected stuff is more predictive of what's going to happen in the future. I don't care what Tanner Scott did in 2024, 2023, 2022. I care what Tanner Scott's going to do in 2025 through the 2028 season. And last year, you look at his expected ERA, expected batting average, all of that was in the 90th percentile. All really solid stuff. The year before that was in the 90th percentile, even higher than 90th percentile for some of those at times. He does not give up a lot of hard hit or barrels, 99th percentile in hard hit percentage. He's not going to give up a lot of hard hits, which means that even though there might be a little bit of command issues with Tanner Scott, he is going to be extremely effective at what he's able to do given his track record. Tanner Scott is another one of these high leverage relievers with insane stuff that gets added to a rotation, added to a staff that already knows how to maximize, how to use, and how to train these high leverage, high strikeout type pitchers. The Dodgers went out and got their guy, a guy that we've been talking about here at Dodgers Daily, and a lot of people have been talking about for years at this point, or at least for the past year or so. Tanner Scott is one of these guys that has been on the radar for the Dodgers for quite a while, not to mention what he was able to do against the Dodgers, particularly against Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers don't have to worry about Tanner Scott anymore because he is a Los Angeles Dodger. The Dodgers went out of their way, or out of their tendencies to not sign long-term deals to relievers. I believe the last main one that they signed was an in-person reliever in Kenley Jansen when they extended him and gave him a longer-term deal. The Dodgers don't typically do this because relievers are a little bit more versatile, or volatile is the word that I'm looking for. They go up and down as far as their effectiveness. It is a lot less predictive to see what you're going to get out of a reliever, but they are absolutely necessary and important, especially once we get to October. And if there is a reliever that you want to bet on, that you want to get and sign a longer term deal to, Tanner Scott would be towards the top of that list of guys that you would want to sign to. He's somebody that's been relatively healthy over the past several seasons, past couple of years, pitching 72, 78, and 62 2/3 innings over the past 3 seasons. Hasn't really dealt with a whole lot of injuries to my knowledge, or at least has been relatively healthy recently. This is another guy that the Dodgers are signing, and another indication that they are all in to win the 2025 World Series and to compete for additional World Series beyond. That is the first thing. And I think the Dodgers saw Tanner Scott, understood where they were financially wise, which they are before this signing above the highest competitive balance tasks, which means that they would be tasked for a Tanner Scott 110% for signing him. And yet, the Dodgers are still committed to winning a World Series championship, to delivering for the city of Los Angeles, delivering upon their promise that they've made to the city, and they went out and signed him. It is amazing to see this roster unfold and the amount of talent that is overflowing on this roster. I actually watched the episode of it last night. It's the Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns goes out and hires a whole bunch of professional baseball players to be on the company's softball team to win $1 million bet, but they're all professionals. The Dodgers are doing that, and they have backups that are really good as well. It's not just they're hoping that 7 or 8 mishaps doesn't happen to the team. They're going out and making sure that nothing happens to this organization because of the guys that won't even see playing time as a result of signing to Tanner Scott, or aren't expected to see playing time as a result of Tanner Scott. They have that much depth. They are the envy of Major League Baseball, and it's amazing to be able to watch this roster come together. We'll talk a little bit about what the ramifications are. Where do they go from here? Are the Dodgers done after signing Tanner Scott? I don't necessarily think they're done. I think there's still a couple of moves, obvious moves, that I think we expect the Dodgers to make. But if they make those moves, what does that mean for the rest of the roster, and how do we construct this roster to maximize the value that this roster has, to maximize on the potential of the players that they have, making sure that we're not wasting careers away, wasting opportunities away? And what are the long-term concerns that you have for the Dodgers? Right now, it's great. Tanner Scott, signing him 4 years, $72 million. There was about a $20 million signing bonus and money deferred, so that's going to create a little bit of intricacies as far as the collective balance tax that goes into it. What is your long-term concerns for this Dodgers roster, and how can we make this team as airtight as possible, and how can we make the long-term health of this organization as airtight as possible? Happy to hear your guys' thoughts. Happy to be joining you guys in the comment section right now and being able to read some of what you have to say. Excited to be here and joined with you guys tonight. Yeah, player, thank you very much for joining us. Happy to see you as well. Dorothy Gale, thank you very much. Living in blue heaven in earth and loving it. Absolutely. Still basking in the championship season. This is so exciting. Yeah, player. It's not. It does not feel. Well, Michigan weather, as I had mentioned, is in the negative degrees wind chill wise, well into the negative degrees. And while I would be probably one of the only people on earth that'd be wanting to go out there and watch a baseball game during this, which, yes, and you can ask people within the organization that have spent time in Great Lakes, yes, I would be there if they were playing baseball and it was this cold outside. I don't think anybody else would want to. And yes, this is football weather. Football's going on. National championship game is going on tonight. Interesting to see what happens there. Let's see. Continuing on, Mr. Classic, thank you very much for joining us. BC, as mentioned. Yang Yi, thank you for joining us tonight. Benji, thank you very much for joining us right now. Let's see. It's just ridiculous, and I love it. Thank you very much for joining us as well. Chris Navarro, as well, thank you very much for joining. Just logged in. You thought you'd go on later. Guess you're going to watch Notre Dame and Ohio State. No, I got car issues I got to deal with, so I got a little bit more stuff that I got to do. Nando390, thank you very much for joining us. The Dodgers needed Scott with Trinan on his way out soon. So that brings up a really interesting conversation, an aspect to the Tanner Scott signing that I think is worthwhile talking about as far as the future of the Dodgers bullpen. What's interesting about the Dodgers bullpen is there's actually don't have a whole lot of time left with a lot of these different pitchers. So what I'm going to use, and the resource that I encourage you guys to use quite a bit, is Fangraphs. And if you look at a lot of the pitchers that are on staff, particularly in the bullpen, most of these relievers have either 1 or 2 years left in arbitration before they are free agents, or are signed to 1 or 2 year deals. So let's go through them. So Tanner Scott, obviously, is signed to a 4-year deal that goes through the 2028 season. That is really good to be able to have because Blake Treinen, he's going to be 37 this upcoming season, is signed in 2025 and 2026, the next 2 seasons. After the 2026 season, he's a free agent. That's when you have Tanner Scott under control. Ryan Brazier, you have for 1 more season, so he will be a free agent after the next season. Michael Kopech only has 1 more year of arbitration, will be a free agent after the season. Dustin May, another one of those options, could be a starter, could be a reliever. We'll talk about him a little bit more in a second. He is going to be a free agent after this season. Evan Phillips, free agent after 2026. Brusdar Graterol, free agent after 2026. Anthony Banda, free agent after 2026. Alex Vesia, free agent after 2026. Most of these guys that you have coming out of the bullpen that you're going to be relying upon to be these high leverage arms have a chance. Doesn't mean that the Dodgers can't re-sign them, and I think for some of them, they will be re-signed. They are going to have guys that are going to be free agents, though. After either 2025 or 2026, signing a Tanner Scott through 2028 means that you have at least 1 holdover in the bullpen. So they could have a combination over the next couple of years of guys within the bullpen currently right now. They re-sign them. They could have other guys that are youth come up into this bullpen with an Edgardo Henriquez, with a Jack Dreyer, with some of these other really insane arms that they have out of the bullpen. They could also use that as an avenue to provide a little bit more length out of the bullpen with some of these young, talented starting pitchers. Talk about their starting pitching options. Blake Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Roki Sasaki now, all signed to longer-term deals. How do we get some of these younger, talented arms? How do we get Gavin Stone, River Ryan, Kyle Hurt, all of these guys that are injured right now that are going to be healthy in the future into this rotation once they get healthy? That could be an avenue in the bullpen, but still having a reliever that is as talented, as gifted as a Tanner Scott is to headline the back end of that bullpen for a long time to come could be a very good thing for the Dodgers to have. So it's interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Dodgers handle and potentially reshape the bullpen over the next 2 to 3 years, because the bullpen that you have to start 2025 could be drastically different than the bullpen that you have to start 2027. I know we're not necessarily concerned about that, but also 2023 was 2 years ago now. And so it is a quick timeline to go to 2027 and advance that far. So thinking about all of these different things is necessary and important. And when you have Tanner Scott, he has a good shot to be a really effective reliever. Now, there are a little bit of concerns that you could potentially have with his command going forward. How is that going to play long term? Is his swing and miss stuff still going to be as effective? Signing a reliever long term is a little bit risky, and this organization probably would have liked to sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal if possible. That was not going to get the job done, though, for Tanner Scott. So they made the deal happen, and they did whatever they could to go out and get the best free agent reliever on the market. And you talk about the bullpen right now. The current projected bullpen with a 6-man starting rotation is Tanner Scott, Michael Kopech, and Blake Treinen as your high leverage arms. Any one of those guys could save games. Even if you add in a Evan Phillips as a high leverage relief arm, could be a guy that saves games for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Talk about Tanner Scott for just a second. He was and has been, at least last year, a lot better against left-handed hitters than right-handed hitters, although he was still in his career really effective against right-handed hitters. But the past 2 seasons, it is close to a 40% strikeout percentage against left-handed hitters for Tanner Scott. He's going to be an insane weapon to go out and get if they face off in the playoffs against the Phillies, a Bryce Harper. If they face against the New York Mets, a Juan Soto. he's going to be effective against left-handed hitters. They have some really talented arms that they can go out and attack right-handed hitters and be effective against them. They haven't necessarily had the ultra high leverage left-handed reliever. Alex Vesia did a really solid job at that, but Tanner Scott is really, really good. So he's going to add to that. So you have Tanner Scott, Michael Kopech, Blake Trinan, Evan Phillips as really your high leverage arms. And then you have Alex Vesia, Anthony Banda, and Ryan Brazier as your other bullpen arms. And this feels weird to call them other bullpen arms, especially a Vesia, and then maybe Banda as well. You will have Bruce Guerrero likely coming back halfway towards the end of the season to be another arm that you could add to this mix. So then you start thinking, man, this bullpen, this roster is starting to get really crowded, and it certainly is. Casey talked a lot about that on the show yesterday. Now the crowd of bullpen arms, of pitchers in general, and even of position players is starting to get really crowded right now. What we don't necessarily know, and this could be something that the organization waits upon in a little bit, is which one of these arms is going to be healthy. Because as of right now, your 13 pitchers that you are projecting to have start the season does not really include a lot of variability or ability to move up and down and get a lot of these guys rest. So your current projected 13 pitcher staff for opening day, and a lot of these guys, at least to the best knowledge that we have, are projected to be healthy, ready to go for the start of opening day, is starting with the starting rotation: Blake Snell, Yoshi Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, Tony Gonsolin, Roki Sasaki, Dustin May. That's your current projected 6-man starting rotation. And then the bullpen, as I had mentioned, Tanner Scott, Michael Kopech, Blake Trinan, Evan Phillips, Alex Vesia, Anthony Banda, and Ryan Brazier. That does not include Landon Knack, Bobby Miller, Justin Robleski, Edgardo Enriquez, Michael Grove, any one of those guys. All of them are down at the minor league level, waiting for there to be some sort of injury or for the Dodgers to option down a Roki Sasaki, Tony Gonsolin, or Alex Vesia, which in all likelihood, and I think all of us can agree, likely will not happen. The Dodgers know a lot more information than we do. And this is not a decision because they can make this work on their 40-man roster right now that the Dodgers have to make immediately. But a concern that Casey and I have mentioned quite a bit is if they go into the season all healthy and ready to go at the start of the 2025 season. Best case scenario. We all want the Dodgers pitchers to be healthy. If that is the case, they don't have the ability to move guys up and down aside from Tony Gonsolin, Alex Vesia, and Roki Sasaki. Those are the only pitchers that do have minor league options, and in reality, they're not going to send those guys up and down. And the ultimate goal for this organization, the ultimate want, is for all these pitchers to be as healthy, ready to go as possible. Part of the way that you can ensure that you have as many high leverage arms as you can, have as many pitchers as you can healthy, ready to go, is to stockpile a whole bunch of high leverage, high impact arms, which certainly the Dodgers have collected a whole bunch of arms that are insane, that would have the ability to start with a lot of different organizations. That is something that they're going about doing. My main question right now for the Dodgers, especially with them wanting to bring back a Clayton Kershaw, especially with their likely being interest with a Kike Hernandez, which that is a different conversation. What is the status? What is the health of the pitchers that they currently have on staff? Because I don't necessarily, while I do want these pitchers to be healthy at the start of the season, I think that's a pretty high priority. My biggest priority is making sure that these pitchers are healthy in October. And I don't want, for instance, the bullpen to wear down. And what that's going to require is either, and likely, a spot that you can send guys up and down to, and probably, and this could be part of their plan, a healthy dose of IL manipulation, or guys getting sent to the IL, however you want to define that. It's going to be interesting to see how the roster unfolds. Adding Tanner Scott, another high leverage arm, is something that the Dodgers were going to do. And the corresponding moves, how do we make this happen? They could wait until the end of spring training. And if everybody's good, healthy, ready to go, then you could turn to possibly an Anthony Banda, possibly a Ryan Brazier, or possibly even a guy like a Dustin May to go ahead and trade those pieces to add a little bit more flexibility. Be interesting to see what happens. Thank you very much for the comment, Nando390, and for talking a little bit about what exactly they'd be able to do going forward with adding a Tanner Scott and how that was able to work out. Yang Yi, Dodgers do not have a quote-unquote long reliever in the bullpen. Who would be the best fit for that role? May, Gonsolin, or Knack? That's a really good question and a really good point of something that the Dodgers currently do not have out of their bullpen. You look at Tanner Scott, Kopech, Trinan, Phillips, Vesia, Banda, Brazier. All of them traditionally, except for Michael Kopech, who was previously a starter, but if you look at just his stats from last season, they're one-inning relievers for the most part. They are not the Ryan Yarbrough types that are going to go out there and pitch 3 to 4 innings when a starter gives up a couple of runs. The Dodgers don't currently have that spot or have a guy that can fill in that role, and that is necessary 100% to be able to go out there and get you through the season, because you can't rely on these relievers to pick up the slack for the starting rotation, especially with how much wear and tear the relievers that were on last year's roster took through the course of not just the regular season, which there is a lot of things that happen in the starting rotation, but through the postseason as well. You can't necessarily rely on that, which means that I think there needs to be a long reliever, which means that one of these guys that is on the roster currently either has to be traded or there likely has to be an injury with one case, which that is totally possible. There's possible that one of these guys is more injured than somebody else. I would assume, and my guess is that likely comes from somebody that is down at the minor league level, like a Landon Knack, although he has traditionally been a starter. Tony Gonsolin, I imagine, as a starting pitcher. Dustin May is interesting because his arm talent is so unique and so good that I think we all want him to be as healthy as he possibly can be. And how do we keep him as healthy as he possibly can be? Could that be during shorter spurts? Could that be during these bulk inning type of relief roles? How they implement him be extremely interesting to see what they do. They only have him for 1 year left, and he does not have any minor league options. And if they are not confident that he's going to be healthy for the season, he could be a trade candidate. That's the only reason why I say that, because there's not a lot of flexibility on this roster, and he does not have flexibility as well, and he's only signed to 1 year deal. So my most likely guess, even though there currently is not a mathematical way to make it work on this roster, would be a Landon Knack, could be a Ben Kasparius, could be any one of those guys that currently is optioned down at the minor league level, or could look at some of the non-roster invites as well. Although I think that's a little bit less likely scenario for the Dodgers to do. Yang Yi, Conforto, 1 year. Russian could play at left field in 2026 and beyond. That certainly could be a possibility for a Dalton Rushing, although I certainly think that they are going to likely want Dalton Rushing to play as much catcher as he possibly can be. After the season, Austin Barnes is going to be a free agent, so if they could get some playing time, especially at Oklahoma City during this upcoming season, Dalton Rushing getting some time at the catching position, or a lot of time at the catching position there, as well as during his off days, which typically at the minor league level, and it depends by player, typically it's an every other day type of thing, or maybe with the Dalton Rushing, because they have 6 games a week, he'll probably get maybe 4 out of the 6 days catching, and the other 2 days spent in left field. Depends on how much they want to work Dalton Rushing in left field. They could get some time out there, although I certainly think with Dalton Rushing, at least right now from what I've seen, he profiles really well at the catching position. But adding a little bit of positional versatility is going to be something that's going to be very much needed. We're going to get back to the other comments. I want to try to get to as many of your guys' comments right now, but we currently have a super chat. Couldn't be more grateful for this. Dorothy Gale with $99.99 super chat. That is, it's humbling. It really is humbling to be able to see that. And to help with the car issues is what it said. Sending money to help with the car issues. I really appreciate that. And it's to see the community come together and be able to support each other is just, it is amazing. And so I couldn't be more thankful for that. And thankful for all of you guys. Dorothy, thank you so much for the super chat. Go Dodgers to you. That is, it is amazing what is being built here, and the fan base that has welcomed so many people into part of it. I'm not from California. I didn't grow up a Dodgers fan, but I came in because of the welcoming nature of the organization, because of the welcoming nature, particularly from Great Lakes and what they've been able to do, and the people from there, Great Lakes being the high A affiliate of the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's been absolutely amazing. And then be able to have this venture with you guys, it's absolutely incredible. So very much thankful, appreciative of you, Dorothy, for the super chat. Couldn't be more grateful for that. So thank you for that. Go Dodgers to you. Hope everything is going well for everybody that's on, wherever you guys are at. Continuing on with the show, which, again, thank you, Dorothy, for that. Owl of Minerva, some of you are new to baseball. Some of you, let's see, baseball is life. There's no guarantees. The Dodgers rotation has potential for greatness or injuries. Never know what's going to happen. We'll see what happens with the Dodgers. And yes, so there certainly is a lot of risk, especially when you go for the more stuff type of profile that they are looking at. Be interesting to see how they go out and approach that. As we have another super chat for Christopher Navarro. Thank you so much for that with $50 super chat. Following Dorothy's lead, God bless, and God bless you and your car. God bless you, God bless Dorothy, and God bless everybody that's here, part of this. I couldn't be more thankful, not just for that, Christopher, but for your continued support for the community, for Dodgers Daily. So thank you guys so much for that. You don't know what to say when you're in this position. So I couldn't be more thankful for you for that. Yeah, you're absolutely amazing, Christopher. Continuing on, Yang Yi, as for third, can Murakami play third base in MLB? I actually haven't seen a whole lot of Murakami play, so I would actually be one of the last people to be able to ask about that. So where this is coming from, Murakami is another one of these Japanese players playing in the league over there in Japan. He is expected to be posted and become a Major League Baseball player next offseason and could be an option for the Dodgers. Max Muncy currently is the third baseman, and I expect him to be the third baseman in the 2025 season. He also has a club option for 2026 that I believe is just $10 million. So if he continues to show signs of life, I would anticipate the Dodgers to pick up that club option because it would be well worth it given the level of production that he has. However, if you have a chance to get a talent like Murakami, which if all indications are, he is a really talented third baseman over there. I don't know how his defense projects, if he's going to be sticking at third base or if his profile's a little bit better as a first baseman. If he projects anywhere near league average as a third baseman, I would expect the Dodgers to at least look into that, given their history of going out and acquiring a lot of international players. We saw Roki Sasaki, Yamamoto, Shohei Ohtani, Hae-Sung Kim. A lot of these players have come to the organization, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I got to do a little bit more research into Murakami and his game to see if I think it profiles best for the Dodgers. Right now, if I had to guess, the 2026 third baseman would be Max Muncy, would be my guess. They have other options that they can turn to. It depends on what works out or what's happening at the shortstop position, but long term, if they're looking for some sort of place to put in Alex Freeland, that could be a possibility. He's played just about mostly mostly shortstop at the minor league level. Small amounts of time at second base when he was combining with a Noah Miller A little bit of time of third base, I believe during the 2023 season in Great Lakes as well. Mostly shortstop, though I would project him to be there, but certainly could slide over to third base if you need an option and shortstop position is filled up. A couple of other guys at the minor league level too that play third base. So how they handle third base, how they handle the infield, really, of course, next couple of seasons is something to watch out for. I think it depends on where they project Mookie Betts. Long term, shortstop, I wouldn't anticipate it. I would more anticipate the second base position. And how does a Ha-Seong Kim, how does he adapt to the major league level? Another fantastic question that the Dodgers are going to look out for. Alan Minerva joining us with another question. As a longtime Dodgers fan, thrilled to experience this. They may not get to the promised land again, but I like their odds. That very much is true. Game of baseball is so unpredictable, especially when the season is not determined by just 162 games. 162 creates a good enough sample that you can have some of the best teams go through that and have the best records in Major League Baseball. But when the season comes down to a 5-game, then a couple of 7-game series, that's just a small sample. And when the course of 162, when most teams lose 60, 70 games over the course of that season that make it to the postseason, there's a chance that during that selection of 5 to 7 games, you're going to lose a couple of those games. It is very unpredictable to be able to see what's going to happen for them. But the Dodgers have positioned themselves to have as good of odds and as deep of a roster as any organization. And if your backup plans for starting pitcher are some of the really talented young pitchers that you have within the organization, and if they bring back Kike Hernandez, then there's a good chance that Andy Pages starts the season at the minor league level and is the first guy that gets called up if something happens, the organization is in a really good spot. Now, I disagree with that decision if they decide to send Andy Pages down, and I think there's a lot of cost that comes to that, but just for the sake of the 2025 season, they position themselves to be set up so incredibly well. Chris Navarro says it'll be 71 degrees at the beach Wednesday and Thursday. I'm pretty sure right now we're going through an insane cold front. It's not going to be 71 to 74 degrees here in the state of Michigan. Kenneth Hall, thank you very much for joining us. Did you see Rojas tease a new number 19? I have not seen anything with the numbers. I actually don't pay attention to a whole lot of the numbers. It's super fun, especially important if you're looking to go out and get a jersey of each one of these players. Christian Navarro says number 19 is retired, so I don't know what number Miguel Rojas is going to get. But we'll see what happens with him. Let's see. We got a comment on the national championship game tonight. I wanted Notre Dame to win, not Ohio State. I can't really say I'm fans of either teams. Being from the state of Michigan, obviously we're not big fans of Ohio State. We'll see what happens. Should be a fun game tonight, though. Much more of a baseball guy than a football guy. Got a comment. I think Tanner Scott is a riskier signing based on the history of big reliever signings. However, the dude is built like a truck, so I have a better feeling about him. Yeah, certainly if you look at free agent relievers that have signed longer term deals, even if you take the most recent big signing free agent reliever with a Josh Hader, signed last year to a 5-year, $100 million deal. And while a lot of his numbers throughout the course of the season were decent, solid, there's a little bit of unpredictability. And we saw Josh Hader give up a very big hit that ended up eliminating the Astros during the postseason. Free agent going out and getting relievers, especially because you can find relievers, waiver wire deals, turn out to be great. That is typically the approach that the Dodgers have taken. This is atypical of the Dodgers to go out and get relievers because they are the riskiest asset to get. But if you're going to take a risk on a reliever, Tanner Scott would be the reliever that you take the risk on. And especially 4 years, $72 million, understanding where the state of this roster is, they have the ability to take these types of risks. And they ultimately found that it was worth it to take it. So, yes, totally agree. There's a lot of risk to these signings, and typically I don't go out and like signing a free agent reliever. However, they have shown a willingness to go above and beyond what even they thought they were going to do, going out and getting relievers. Let's continue on to go with some of this. Capital says they'll just trade prospects for relievers at the deadline if they need more. That's the MO around the league. That could be a possibility, especially depending on where we see as far as the health of this staff. That's one of the things that they're backing up and trying to make sure they have as much depth as possible, is because they want to make sure that what has happened in year past, which is starting pitchers go down, relievers go down, pitching go down in general, be due to injuries. They want to make sure they have as much depth as possible to make sure that they can cover for the gaps. The trade deadline, there is going to be opportunities. And if you look at this roster, I want the team to have a really good farm system. I want them to acquire as much depth and have as many really solid prospects as possible. But I also want these guys, especially guys that are close to the big league level. And you could even see this with the course of the interviews that we've released here on Dodgers Daily. I encourage you guys, if you have not done so, look and watch the interview with a guy like a Justin Robo, and hear his comments about what is needed for him to take that next step and to get acclimated to the big league level. Felt like he was turning around a corner, and then the Dodgers acquired a Jack Flaherty. Now, that was the correct decision for the organization. They went on, and he was one of the only starting pitchers that helped them win a World Series championship. But for him, for his development, when we're talking exclusively about the players and looking at their perspective, with a Justin Robleski, he needed that additional starts to get to the next level that he has. So what is the plan for these guys, and where is the state and health of the arms that they have? That could be something where they look to trade some of these guys, whether it be once they assess and see where they're at the start of the season after spring training has taken place, or halfway through the season. I do not want to see the careers of Bobby Miller, Landon Knack, Justin Robleski, Edgardo Henriquez, all of these guys wasted at the minor league level. I want to see while I know that they are necessary for the season, this upcoming season, to have as much depth as possible, you have to look to see what you can do and have a heart for some of these players as well. So that's a really hard balance that I don't necessarily know how to, because I know a lot of these guys, or watched a lot of these guys play through their time and seen their journey. It's really tough for me to be able to determine when the right place for that is. If they're going to trade prospects, my guess is going to be those type of prospects, as opposed to the guys that are down at the lower levels that won't be eligible for the Rule 5 draft for a long time. That'd at least be the first guys that the Dodgers try to trade to create as much roster spots as they possibly can, which we've seen on this roster. There's already not a lot of flexibility, so that becomes tough. That means that if you want to add guys, especially if guys that are going to likely be healthy for the start of opening day, if you wanted to add a Ryan Helsley, be a free agent after 2025, which, Sam, thank you very much for joining us, mentioned as a possibility. If you wanted to add a Ryan Helsley, you would have to assume that one of the guys that is currently projected for the roster, especially one of the guys that is currently projected for the bullpen, Scott, Kopech, Trinan, Phillips, Vesia, Banda, Brazier, one of them is going to be injured for the start of the season. Or you have to trade one of those guys, or release one of them, which right now you would have to trade somebody from the 40-man roster to create a spot for them, or wait for a spring training to start. I wouldn't anticipate a trade for Ryan Helsley, as good as he is, after the Tanner Scott signing, though I have been wrong in the past. Carlos Garcia, what is Tanner Scott's strikeout percentage? Really good question. We'll talk about that right now as the screen that I have for Fangraphs is starting to load. So let's look at the past couple of seasons. It's hovered right at around 30%. Last year, 2024, which, remember, his March and April, especially strikeouts and walks, not great. Still ended up with the 28.6% strikeout percentage. Year before that was about 34%. Year before that, 31%. As mentioned at the start of the show, looking at percentiles, strikeout percentage, and this will show you where strikeout percentage was. Last year was in the 86th percentile. The year before that was 98th percentile. Gets an insane amount of swing and miss. Let's see. Dorothy Gale. Don't sell Conforto short. He has a hallmark similar to Teo before he signed with the Dodgers. He could very well be re-signed like Teo was re-signed. That could be an option for Michael Conforto. And when they signed him, because he was an outfielder that was similar profile to a Teoscar Hernandez, meaning that a lot of his underlying metrics were a lot better than what the actual results were. You look at his production outside of San Francisco was significantly better. You look at some of the batted ball data was really solid for Michael Conforto. He could have been the guy that the Dodgers took a one-year bet on, like they did with Teoscar Hernandez for the 2024 season. That could have been the option for Conforto in 2025. They decided to re-sign Teoscar as well to fill out some of the holes in the outfield. What's going to be interesting is how do they also implement with both Conforto and Teoscar. I think we would both all probably agree are probably slightly below league average defensively. That's probably the best way to put it. There could be arguments that they're a lot worse than that. Teoscar Hernandez did not do well in left field last year. He's going to move over to right field. Perhaps there's a big improvement for him, but I wouldn't project them to be great defenders out there. How do we also get playing time for Andy Pages, who only has one minor league option left? He is a really key player because if they just send him down to the minor league level, and let's say they try to go out and get a Kyle Tucker next offseason, or they re-sign a Michael Conforto, get another corner outfield, then you're stuck and you're not maximizing the value that Andy Pages has. Been something I've been echoing quite a bit is I want the Dodgers to maximize on the value of players that they have, and thinking long term, I also want the Dodgers to get to a place where they can have sustained success, which part of the way that you get sustained success is with consistent investment into younger players. There's going to come a time when Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and even, Shohei Ohtani and Max Muncy and all these guys start to get old and start to age out. And if one or two of these longer-term deals doesn't pan out too well, you start to be boxed in by the contracts that you have to where not everybody that you get can be a free agent signing. How do we supplement the younger guys onto this roster and make sure that they are as acclimated to the big league level as possible, and make sure that a Dalton Rushing, when he gets called up, doesn't get 2 games a week or 1 game a week where he gets playing time? Maybe in left field, maybe as backup catcher. If it is like that for Dalton Rushing, he will never be the big league player that we are projecting him to be. If Andy Pages is on the major league roster and only stays 2 games a week during this season and however long that the Dodgers have him, he will never reach the heights that the Dodgers have projected him to have. It requires sacrifice and investment, and how they approach that is going to be fascinating. What we've seen from the Dodgers this offseason is they are all in on winning now, winning as much as they possibly can now. And there is a very good argument that is for the best of the Dodgers for the short term and for what they're able to do. Long term, that is some areas that I have concerns for them, and it's something that I've talked about quite a bit. Continuing on right here, Pete Hayes, thank you very much for joining. Is a trade for Luis Robert Jr. possible if he's healthy? Seems like a good way to open up roster spots and increase flexibility. Could be a different way to be able to do that. Never been the biggest fan of Luis Robert, particularly because of his profile of high strikeouts, low walks. I've talked about this a lot of different times on the show, which thank you very much for joining us. I don't know how often you've had an opportunity to join the show. Fits profile-wise because I think the 2 areas of positioning that the Dodgers have biggest questions at on the position player side are center field and shortstop. And I think it's important for them to get some of those positions right. Certainly, Luis Robert has about as much talent as any player has in the game of baseball, and his power is ridiculous and unbelievable. And a lot of his skill set defensively, he can play really solid center field. So I wouldn't anticipate it at this point. I don't think a Luis Robert trade is imminent. But if that could be an avenue that the Dodgers decide to go down if they want to go out and get another player. He's a center fielder. Profile that wise fits what the Dodgers need. I just not necessarily in love with adding too many players that have a lot of swing and miss, which adding in that to a Teoscar Hernandez, to a Max Muncy, I think creates a little bit too much of that type of profile. Even Shohei Ohtani gets a lot of swing and miss, albeit that comes with an insane amount of production, an insane amount of power. I just don't want there to be too much inconsistency to the offense. If you have a lot of guys that have a lot of swing and miss, what that's going to do with certain stretches and times is that's going to lead to a lot of times, especially if they're guys with swing and miss and have power, to where you're going to score 15 runs a game, or what seems like that for a good stretch of time. There's also going to be stretches where all of them struggle at the exact same time. And what scares me most about having too many of those types of players is what happens if they are struggling when October happens. Then you're getting a lot of swing and miss, then you're not scoring a whole lot of runs. So that's my biggest concern with Luis Robert, although profile or position player wise, I totally get how that makes sense for you. We'll get to a couple more questions here before we get out of here, and I'm able to go work on some stuff here. Kristen Navarro, how far down is Bobby Miller now as being called up in case of injury? Who's ahead of him now? Knack, Kasperius, etc. It's a really good question. Bobby Miller has tool-wise and stuff-wise as good of stuff as just about anybody within the organization. And most other teams would kill to have a player like a Bobby Miller on their team, on their staff. There's also a lot of other pitchers that are at the minor league level that are down there, projected to be down there for the Dodgers. Like as mentioned, Landon Knack, Ben Kasperius, Justin Robleski, all of those different guys are not projected to make the Dodgers opening day roster if the season were to start today, and everybody that's projected to be healthy is actually healthy. If I had to guess, and this is not based on zero information, so take this with the smallest grain of salt possible, Bobby, as we saw Landon Knack get a lot of opportunities during the postseason last year and get a lot of opportunities down the stretch. It depends on where Bobby Miller enters spring training during this upcoming season. I think there's going to be a really intense battle between all of those guys. One, to see if they can get an opportunity to start the 2025 season, if there is a spot open, or if there's some sort of injury that happens, or somebody comes into spring training not as healthy, or they want to strategically rest some of these guys. My guess would be Landon Knack would probably get the spot, at least right now, if the way that these guys pitched in 2024 is any indication of how they're going to pitch in 2025. But if Bobby Miller goes out there and shows that he's closer to the pitcher in 2023 than he was in the pitcher in 2024, there could be a very good argument that he gets the first opportunity because of the potential upside that he has. I think Bobby Miller has insane upside, but we've seen a little bit of the downside as well. Landon Knack, I think, is really solid, really consistent, and while it might not necessarily always be the prettiest out there, I think he's going to provide a lot of innings, and I think getting and providing innings is going to be of really good value for the organization. So that's why I might anticipate, at least right now, him getting called up first over a Bobby Miller, although that's just a total guess. It's going to be determined by how these guys enter spring training and how they are actually throwing, whether that's to start the season or be the first guy that gets called up from Oklahoma City. How they adapt to that and how they are pitching is going to determine a lot of that stuff. So don't sleep on those guys or any of the other guys that are within the organization. Like New Blue Order says, sleeper Frasso, not sure, but he reminded me of when he was considered untouchable. Yeah, interesting to see Nick Frasso come out there. If you aren't familiar with him, injured all of 2024, has really, really amazing stuff. Came over from Toronto, I believe, in the trade that sent, what was that the trade that sent Mitch White and Alex DeJesus over to Toronto? Could have been that trade. Happened during the 2022, I believe, year. Got to see a Nick Frasso, River Ryan piggyback start in Lansing, and both of those guys were insane, ridiculous. Nick Frasso is very underrated because we haven't heard a lot of him because he's been injured. So how he comes back from injury is going to be fascinating, and I think he likely sees at least a little bit of action at the big league level if things go right. If there is an opportunity, I should say, for him, not necessarily if things go right. If things go right, everybody's healthy and then there's nobody that's injured. But when there's an opportunity, I think we could potentially see Nick Frasso come up. Alfonso Lucio, start with Muncy. He's probably done for the season. I haven't heard anything with Max Muncy. He's going to be the starting third baseman for the 2025 season, unless there's something else that has taken place that I have not heard of. Max Muncy is going to be the starting third baseman. Gregory, it is really sad to see all these great players stuck in the minor leagues with no way out. Must feel so frustrating and desperate. Just sad when you give it some thought. Certainly is. Take yourself out of the fan perspective and put yourself in the shoes of these guys that is incredibly talented and worthy of a call up to the big league level that sees no future new opportunity anywhere in the future. Say, for example, like a Hunter Fiducia. I get it. It provides having a third catcher at the minor league level. Has minor league options. I believe he has 2 at this point. One of those will certainly get used up. But when you have Will Smith and Austin Barnes blocking you, plus a Dalton Rushing on his way up that likely is going to get an opportunity over you as you're starting to get older and you're waiting for an opportunity, it is hard to think about that, especially when he's been productive and is deserving of a shot at the big league level. So it's a really unique balance here at Dodgers Daily, understanding that aspect, hearing not just from them, but hearing from the family of these people who deserve to get opportunities at the big league level, while balancing the want and desire and the necessity to go out and try to build a dynasty. And so whatever these guys can get as far as opportunities, I find it very difficult, especially if it helps the Dodgers as an organization. I'm all for whatever gets these guys opportunities to get at the big league level, while making sure that the Dodgers organization is as healthy, ready to go. So that's what I want for each one of these guys that's coming up in the system, and that I get to see and get to cheer for and get to actually know a lot of these guys. Christian Navarro, I can't believe Toronto actually signed a free agent. Congratulations to Toronto, by the way, signing Anthony Santander. Good for them. It seemed like they've been coming up short for a lot of these different free agent signings, so I hope Anthony Santander does well with Toronto. They have made a lot of renovations to their facility. Looks really nice. Never had the opportunity to be able to go there, but wish Toronto nothing but success this upcoming season. Finn 1988, one of Casey's favorite people here, to be part of this. How much will the Giants stink this year? Asking for a friend, and then he's adding in their stink. We'll get into that a little bit closer to the season as all the free agents try to lie down. Finn 1988, as the name would indicate, not very much a big fan of the San Francisco Giants. Chris Navarro says San Francisco will finish a few games ahead of Colorado, a long distance from LA, San Diego, and Arizona. It's actually an interesting comment from a couple of videos ago. I haven't had a chance to respond. Jay, one of the really cool people that we're able to interact with here at Dodgers Daily, had a really good argument for San Francisco and what they were able to do. Not saying that he likes San Francisco, but as far as the talent level that is on their team, and certainly they have a lot of talent on their team, or at least some really solid players. That's about all nice things I will say about San Francisco right now, as I'm sure that's not the most healthy thing that I was saying. Alfonso Lucio says, no, I was saying Muncy is probably done after his free agency. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, once he's a free agent, whether it's, and my guess would be probably after the 2026 season, you could see potentially that because Max Muncy is starting to get up there in age a little bit, he will be entering his age 34, 35 season. He's about 34 and a half years old right now. And I say that because he's going to turn 35 somewhere during the middle of this season. Interesting to see what happens. Christopher Zaro says, hopefully Muncy moves on to the A's to play with his other Max Muncy that has the exact same birthday. Yes, there is a player within the A's organization. Saw him in Lansing when he was with part of the Lugnuts. Another Max Muncy, exact same birthday, over playing for the Athletics. Not the Oakland Athletics, just the Athletics. And one last comment that we'll get to today. New Blue Order. Hi, Austin. What percentage of some sort of trade going down before the season starts would you estimate? I mean, with this front office, with this organization, there is no. I would still think that there's likely some type of trade or some type of move that they're likely to make. Just predicting out the rest of the offseason, I think we're all anticipating Clayton Kershaw to be re-signed and once spring training starts and then immediately added to the 60-day injured list because he's likely to miss the first part of the season. That's not going to impact the 26-man roster immediately. I also think we're all expecting Kike Hernandez to likely come back, which pushes out either Chris Taylor or you get to choose one of Hae-Sung Kim, Andy Pages, and James Outman, assuming everybody else is healthy. That's what that means position player-wise. For the pitching, and I think this is where a lot of my questions as far as trades going down, depends on the health of the pitchers going into spring training, which, by the way, a month from today is when spring training games are going to start. February 20th, the Dodgers will take on the Chicago Cubs in Camelback Ranch. It's going to be really exciting to be able to go to a spring training game. How those pitchers are doing health-wise, it's going to be fascinating, and ultimately decide what the Dodgers do with their pitching depth that they have built up throughout the season. And this is something we've talked about quite a bit. They need to have a roster spot for guys to be able to move up and down. Whether they decide to strategically do that, wait for injury, however, or leave an actual physical roster spot open for a Landon Knack, for a Bobby Miller, for any one of these guys, they need to leave some type of spot open. So I think with your question, one of the things I'm going to be looking for is how healthy are a lot of these pitchers, especially, and these are some of the key ones that I'm going to be looking out for immediately. Not saying that they are injured, but saying that they, like for a guy like a Dustin May, he has not been able to stay healthy over the past couple of seasons, hasn't reached 50 innings over the past, since 2021 or even beyond that, hasn't really pitched a whole lot to the big league level. Where is his health status at? Because if he's not healthy, ready to go, that could be the up-down spot, in which case you might not have to trade anybody. What is Evan Phillips and his health looking like? And I only say that because he missed the World Series. Is there any sort of long-term concerns with him? I would anticipate not, but we also don't know how each one of these guys are healthy, ready to go. If all of these guys are healthy, then I think it becomes a question of who could you possibly trade to create an avenue for an up-down spot. Whether that is to start the season, whether you want to start the season with as many of these guys and wait to see if there's an injury, or if you want to go ahead and create that up-down spot for the start of the season. That is going to be the biggest question for a trade. Right now, how they could go about making this roster work, because they currently don't have to make any moves, even if they want to go ahead and add in a Clayton Kershaw and a Kike Hernandez, if they sign those guys after spring training starts, after, I believe it's February 8th. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that is the day that they can sign a Clayton Kershaw and a Kike Hernandez and move guys to the 60-day injured list. if they go ahead and do that, then they don't necessarily have to make a trade. However, if it creates an opportunity for one of these guys who currently does not see an opportunity and is likely used solely as depth, it's very difficult for me to be able to argue with any trade that they make. And especially if they're able to bring back guys that don't necessarily have to be on the 26-man roster or be on the 40-man roster in general. If we see other moves, like let's say that they trade a Ryan Brazier to create an up-down spot, and they go ahead and trade for someone guy like they traded for Michael Bush. Not saying that they'll get the exact same type of prospect, but they could get a guy at the lower levels of the minor league system that's not going to be Rule 5 draft eligible for a couple of years. I think that could be something, if pitchers are starting to look healthy, that they could do. Because I don't want these pitchers just to be healthy at the start of 2025. The top priority is make sure that as many of these arms are as healthy as they possibly can be for the 2025 postseason. That is the top priority for this organization. How you go about doing that the conversations must be about that. Whether it's up-down day, whether it's up-down train, whether it is with dealing with some type of injured list type of thing, that must be the top priority, because you cannot have the same starting rotation that you did in 2024 and win the World Series again. It is very unlikely that they're going to be able to do that, or at least your odds decrease pretty dramatically. So that's what my main concern is. Vin1988, $5. Thank you very much for the super chat as well. Share the show with fellow friends. These guys are the best. You're the absolute best. Vin1988 and Dorothy as well. Christopher Navarro. Can't thank you guys enough for your support here at Dodgers Dogs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. That is going to wrap up the show today. As far as what we're going to do, I don't know what the schedule for the rest of the week is. I do know, however, Wednesday night, I believe it is 5:30 Pacific. I have to transfer Eastern to Pacific. Typically, we go on at about 5:30 Pacific. Wednesday nights, Casey and I believe, should be going live Wednesday as well. We'll have a lot more of these conversations talking about Tanner Scott added to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Are they done? Where will they go for here? We know this front office is as committed as any front office in the game of baseball to winning and putting up the best product that they possibly could be. The Tanner Scott signing, it is abnormal for the front office to go out and make this type of signing, but it goes down and doubles down on their commitment to the fans, to the organization, on winning a World Series championship in 2025. I am so excited about that. The Dodgers have as good of a chance as anybody. Doesn't mean that it will be given to them. It will not be. Doesn't mean that they will win it. They may not. But they have as good a chance as anybody. And they continue to double down and try to build the best roster as they possibly can be. Tanner Scott is just the next signing to go towards that point. I want to thank you all guys all for being here, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Been a super fun show with you guys. Thank you guys so much. God bless all of you. We will be back Wednesday night to have another fun show. Until next time, though, thank you and go Dodgers.